Hey everybody, Charlie Craig here. I want to say welcome to Season 2, Episode 4 of the Life His Way podcast. Still on this series and topic of talking about how to deal with persecution in a godly way. How do we act and what do we do when we're being persecuted because of our faith in Jesus? And for me, it's been enriching to dive into this and to get to share with you. So I hope it's been valuable to you as well. And today I'm just going to again go over one point. And this will be our next point. I'm not sure. I know there's a total of 9 of them. And I can't remember what number I'm on right now. But today's topic, some of you will say, finally, we get to talk about something that sounds good, like it's going to appease me. And then the other half, you may argue with me and say that it's kind of contradicting. And maybe at the end of this, we'll all be unsatisfied. So this is what it says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 9. Jesus speaking, coming from his message that we call the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew chapter 5, verse 9. And Jesus says this: "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God." Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. And I've done short teachings on this in the past, and maybe I'll bring it to the podcast in the future. But really quick right here, Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those who create peace, not the peacekeepers, people who just want to keep the peace, but people who create peace. Jesus says they're blessed. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons and daughters of God. And I think that's so key right there, that in order to create peace, there's going to have to be a level of confrontation. There's going to be a level of action. You can't be passive in order to create peace. To keep the peace, you can be passive, but not to create peace. And then the Bible goes on in the New Testament in Romans chapter 12, verse 18, and it says this, Paul speaking, and Paul says, "If possible, so far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone." He says, if possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So Jesus wants us to create peace. And Paul goes on, and I think that he doubles down on that idea by saying, as far as it depends on you, like do whatever you can to live at peace with everyone. So again, I'm only responsible for my actions and what I do, and other people are responsible for their own actions for what they do. So as far as it depends on me, I'm going to do everything possible to create peace in every relationship that I have and that I encounter. Now, is it going to be possible to live at peace with everyone? No. But as far as it depends on me, I'm going to try my hardest because that's what God's word instructs me to do. So the one topic that I'm going to go over today is confrontation. Like, how do I deal with being persecuted in a godly way? How do I deal with persecution because of my faith towards me in a godly way? And there's going to have to be a point of confrontation. So we're going to talk about that today in this 4th episode of the 2nd season of Life His Way podcast. All right, so I actually counted the points, and this is point number 6, which is confront them. How to deal with persecution, confront the person doing the persecuting. And a lot of times this term, confrontation, can be just equated with fighting. And I think that's a very limited understanding of the word. And here is my definition, and maybe Webster will disagree with me, or maybe he'll agree with me, but confrontation to me is 2 or more opposing parties communicating their disagreements. It's 2 or more opposing parties talking about, communicating about their disagreement. And here's the truth on that. Violence and hostility is not required. Violence and hostility is optional, but it is not required whenever we're talking about healthy confrontation. If someone that you consistently communicate with and consistently deal with tends to treat you differently in a negative way because of your faith, then you need to have a conversation with them. You need to have a conversation with them, and in that conversation, you're confronting them about their behavior. The goal is to help them understand how you feel and how you would like to be treated moving forward. Their response is their responsibility. Their response of your confrontation, you're confronting them. Their response to that is not your responsibility, it is their responsibility. Just like your behavior is your responsibility, my behavior is my responsibility, their response and their behavior is their responsibility. If you are caught in a moment of offense, if you're caught in a situation where you're being offended, I believe that you should confront it right then and there if you are capable of holding it together in that moment with grace and with honor. If you can't keep it together in that moment, then wait and circle back around to that individual, to that offender, and confront them when you're able to keep it together and to have that confrontation with grace and with honor. What does graceful and God-honoring confrontation look like? For me, it's clarifying and it's educating. It's clarification and it's education. I want to ask them a question or questions that clarify the intent of their behavior or their statement that I found to be offensive. To bring clarity, that clarification looks like me asking questions that require them to clarify their intent of their statement or their behavior that I found to be offensive. After they respond to my question, then I want to inform them and educate them about how it made me feel, and I want to go further and educate them on how I would prefer to be treated moving forward. I think it's as simple as that we clarify, hey, what did you mean when you said that? And then we educate, hey, that's how it made me feel, and this is how I would like to be treated moving forward. And that there is healthy confrontation. Now, I do have some examples right here that I want to quickly go over to see what this looks like in a practical way. So say a teammate makes fun of me for listening to Christian music. I'm going to clarify by asking a question similar to this. Are you seriously judging me for listening to Christian music? Like, what's it to you? Then they respond however they choose to respond. And then I'm going to teach them and tell them how it made me feel, and then teach them and tell them how I would like to be treated in the future. And here's what that response from me is going to look like. I get that you have your own beliefs, and I'm not judging you for them, so I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't judge me for my beliefs. It's as simple as that. Now, you may say that's actually oversimplified, and that's not how that conversation's going to end up. Yeah, that's not going to be the end of that conversation. Like, that's just the beginning of that confrontation by clarifying, hey, are you seriously going to treat me differently for listening to Christian music or for whatever you're treating me differently for? And then they respond however they choose to, and then you say, hey, I get it. We all have different beliefs. I'm not going to judge you for yours, and I'm asking that you wouldn't judge me because of my beliefs. And then there's going to be a further conversation and further confrontation there, and it's a healthy way to confront persecution. That example right there, I believe is graceful. I believe it's honoring. And hopefully, as that conversation progresses, it leads to healthy discussion and maybe even an opportunity to share your faith. That is ideal. Like, that's the ideal situation right there, is that it leads to healthy conversation, healthy confrontation, and it may even give you the opportunity to share about your faith and share why you do the things you do or why you don't do the things that you don't do. And that would be ideal right there. But here's the reality. There are a lot of people who are simply mean, who are simply offensive, and they enjoy being a bully and will continue to persecute you. Now, the next 2 points in this series is going to address that. But the reality of it is, more than likely, unfortunately, they're going to gaslight you. More than likely, they may even become more aggressive in their persecution. More than likely, they might even try to get others to rally against you and to join their side of things in persecuting you. More than likely, unfortunately, that's what is probably going to happen. But again, their response is their responsibility. Your response and my response on how we carry ourselves as a follower of Christ, that's going to be our responsibility. They have their response and they can choose how they respond, and we have our response and we choose how we respond. But listen to this. This is key right here. Their response is their responsibility, and their response is also a lesson to you. Their response is a lesson to you, and it's going to teach you something. They are showing and telling you who they are. They're showing and they're telling you who they are. As much as we all want to be a part of the group and have friends and be friends with everybody, and as much as we all want to live in peace with everybody, depending on their response, they might be telling you that they are not the type of person, or they're not the type of people that you want to be close with. That they're not the type of people that you want to be closely connected with. Again, their response is their responsibility, and it's also a lesson to you that maybe you're not my friend. Maybe you're not the type of person, or they're not the type of people that you want to be connected with on a close level. You might work together, you might play a sport together, you might go to school together, you may be connected in that kind of way, but beyond that, you may want to limit your connection towards them, and we'll talk more about that in the next couple of videos. You might learn that you need to change something within you. Like when you're having that confronting conversation, as you're learning and as you're clarifying and as you're teaching and as that conversation moves forward, you might learn that there's something that you need to change on your end. Perhaps you may be coming off as judgmental, or maybe you're coming off as disrespectful, or maybe overbearing. If that is the case, then our response is our responsibility, so we apologize and we change moving forward so that we're not disturbing or disrespecting them in any kind of way. We're going to be who we are. We're not going to change, but we also don't want to be offensive to the people around us or create a hostile environment for the people and the teammates and classmates and that kind of stuff. We don't want to create a unhealthy, toxic, hostile environment because of ourselves being disrespectful or overbearing in some kind of way. There is a way that we can be life-giving in our faith journey. Like there is a way that we can give life to the environments that we step in and not suck the life out of. And honestly, I would say go back to the very first 2 episodes of season 1 of this podcast and see how is it that I could be a life-giving Christ follower and not a life-sucking Christ follower in the environments that I find myself in. Like, I don't want to be judgmental. I don't want to be overbearing. I don't want to be disrespectful in any kind of way, because that's not who Jesus was. And that's not who he calls us to be either. But then on the other side of that, perhaps in that confrontation, they apologize and you're able to move forward in that conversation and move forward in that confrontation to come to a healthy place, whether that's you have an understanding with each other, or maybe it's a space where you're able to share more about your faith and to share your perspective and to hear theirs as well. At the end of the day, again, I've said this a billion times, your response is your responsibility, and their response is their responsibility. Like, there's nothing that we can do about that. We can be as kind and as loving as we possibly can, and that's what we are going to do. But at the end of the day, the way that people perceive us is their choice. The way that people respond to us and respond to you is going to be their choice and not mine. Now, the pushback, or maybe the confusion that some of you may have in watching this, is that our topic last week was talking about when Jesus says, turn the other cheek. Like confrontation, for some of us in our minds, it may seem like confrontation is the opposite of turning the other cheek. But I believe healthy confrontation speaks to this in a clear way. Confrontation is not necessarily negative or disrespectful or sinful retaliation. Confrontation is not the same thing as retaliation. Grace-filled and honoring confrontation is not repaying an insult with another insult. It's a conversation that leads to an understanding and prayerfully would be a tool that leads to evangelism or sharing the gospel. Like from this perspective that I'm talking about, confrontation is not me upping them on the insult or upping them on persecution. Confrontation is simply having a healthy dialogue and coming to an understanding on, hey, what you're doing is making me feel this way, and this is how I would like to be treated. It's not repaying insult with insult. It's not hitting the other person back. It's not a fight. It's not toxic, it's not unhealthy. This is healthy, and this is maturity, and this is going to require a lot of growth in all of our lives when it comes to conflict resolution. The fact is that we all work with unbelievers every day. I mean, all of us work with people who don't share the same faith that we share because we live on planet Earth, and Jesus says that that's just going to be the case. But if an unbeliever is persecuting you because of what you believe, then that could create a hostile work environment that could negatively affect your team's performance. And being mature and growing in our walk with God is going to require us to have that healthy, godly confrontation to limit the amount of toxic disagreements and toxic interactions that can negatively impact the way that I perform or the way that my team, all of us, perform together. And this is why we have to have good conflict resolution skills that require healthy confrontation. Now, here's the reality of this. If we were living like not in the United States and living in a country like North Korea, then obviously this would not be an option. This wouldn't be a conversation. But we're here in the US, and we're actually expected to be able to have these conversations. And if we refuse to have these kind of conversations and to have this type of confrontation, then we are actually playing a part in creating a foundation for legal persecution based on our faith. Like, we don't dishonor anyone because of their faith, and we shouldn't be dishonored because of what we believe either. And we live in a country where we have protection and the right to believe what we believe without the fear of persecution, without the fear of being bullied because of it. And if we find ourselves in a situation where that's happening, then we have a responsibility to confront that. We have a responsibility to say something and to bring some clarity and to bring some education and to take action to help alleviate that in some kind of way so that we can continue to take hold of our faith and live the life that Jesus has called us as his followers to live. So that was point number 6. And in the next video next week, we're going to talk about forgiveness, which is point number 7. And then from there, we're going to talk about taking the necessary steps whenever persecution just isn't getting better with certain individuals, which could look like having to distance ourselves in some kind of way from that relationship. So I'm super grateful that you're tuning into this. And next week we're going to talk about forgiveness. We're going to do a 2-in-1 next week. We're going to talk about point number 7 and point number 8, forgiveness, and then we'll talk about how to maybe sever ties in a healthy way when we're being persecuted because of our faith from an individual. So check it out next week, and then we'll do one more episode under this series of how to deal with persecution in a godly way. So 2 more episodes in this series, and then we'll kind of switch up the topic for the last few episodes of this season in the Life This Way podcast. God bless you. Can't wait till next week. It's going to be a great, challenging couple of topics, and I will see you then.